You see, my dear, what keeps us bound isn't the lock on the door. It is our own fear of what lies on the other side. Emily came seeking closure and left with freedom. But it wasn't magic. It was a choice. She chose to face the ghost she had created in her own mind. Have you ever stood before a locked door, knowing that everything you desire, everything you need, is on the other side, yet your hand trembles, unable to turn the key? We tell ourselves it's fear, a simple primal thing, but fear is often just a mask, a convenient shadow we cast ourselves to hide from a deeper, more intimate truth, the truth that sometimes we are the ones who forged the lock. We are the ones who swallowed the key. We locked the door from the inside. A secret is a heavy thing. It does not decay with time. It petrifies, turning a soft memory into a stone in your own heart, a weight you carry until you choose to put it down. My name is Madame Morgana, and I must be clear, this is not a place of parlor tricks, of crystal balls that show you winning lottery numbers, or cheap fortunes printed on slips of paper. This is a sanctuary, a quiet harbor where the stories carried by lost souls, the burdens they have carried for miles, for years, can finally drop their anchor. You see, the veil between our world and the next, it isn't a wall of stone, cold and impenetrable. Think of it more as a curtain of smoke. Most days it is thick, obscuring everything. But on nights like these, when the world holds its breath, a simple, heartfelt sigh is enough to part it. Tonight, we speak of Emily. She came to me looking for a period at the end of a sentence. A simple, black, full stop to a story that had haunted her every waking moment for 5 long years. But what she was about to learn is that the spirits of those we loved, they don't deal in punctuation. They deal in torn pages, in secrets scribbled in the margins, in truths that refuse to be buried. Now, ask yourself this. What if you found out the ghost of your late husband appeared, not to whisper "I love you," but to confess that his greatest mistake wasn't the betrayal you spent years convinced had happened, but a secret, a truth so devastating he took it to his grave, a truth that could shatter the fragile peace you finally, painstakingly found. That is the precipice on which Emily stood. And that is the story I'm about to share with you now. But first, find a quiet space. Take a deep breath. Settle in. Because once the veil tears, there is no going back. The rain that night was relentless, almost biblical, the kind that seems to want to wash away the very names from the street signs. It was on this night that Emily arrived. She stood outside my door. For a full 3 minutes, I felt her presence before I saw it. A tremor in the energy of the night. I watched her silhouette through the beaded curtain of my doorway. A statue of hesitation carved from rain and doubt. 1 step forward, then a shuffle, a half step back. That is the dance of a soul at war with itself. The dance of someone who craves the truth and dreads it in equal measure. When she finally entered, she brought the storm in with her. Not just the cold water dripping from her coat onto my antique rug, but the tempest in her eyes. They were the eyes of a mariner who has seen the kraken and lived to tell the tale, but was never the same again. And as she drew closer, my senses picked up something else, a detail seemingly insignificant. Underneath the scent of rain, and a sorrow so profound it was almost a physical weight, there was a faint, sweet smell of perfume, floral, expensive, jasmine, and lily. It clung to her coat like a ghost. And it was not hers. I filed it away. In my line of work, you learn that the universe rarely deals in coincidence. Some details are just loose threads, but others are the start of a knot that can choke the life out of a memory. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite me. She sat, her posture ramrod straight, her hands clutching her leather purse, as if it contained the crown jewels. But I knew better. It contained something far heavier. A question she had carried for half a decade. A question that had corroded her peace from the inside out. "He was a good man," she began, her voice a fragile whisper, almost stolen by the sound of the rain. "He was my everything, Madame Morgana, my sun and my moon, until I realized it wasn't just me." I let the silence sit between us, a comfortable, heavy blanket. It is in the silence that the real stories begin to surface, gasping for air. "Tell me about a time you were happy," I said. My voice, soft, a counterpoint to the storm outside. "A memory that is purely good." It took a moment, but then her eyes softened. The rigid lines of her face eased, and for a second I saw the woman she was before the storm. A ghost of a smile. "Our 5th anniversary," she said, her voice finding a little of its lost warmth. "He took me to a small Italian restaurant downtown. There was a violinist, and he gave me this." She instinctively, tenderly touched a small, elegant locket around her neck. "He said, 'So you can always keep me close to your heart.'" We laughed all night. For that one night, everything was perfect. Just as quickly as it appeared. Her smile faded. The storm returned to her eyes. "And then?" I prodded gently. "And then, a week later, I was cleaning out his winter coat, and I found a receipt stuffed deep in the pocket for a necklace, a different one, a diamond pendant, a very, very expensive, very different one, from a boutique I'd never even heard of." She paused, the memory physically twisting her face. When I asked him about it, he got so defensive. His whole posture changed. He said it was a gift for his sister's birthday. A lie, a clumsy, desperate lie. His sister's birthday wasn't for another 4 months. She spoke of the other woman, then. Never by name, always just her. The colleague, who laughed a little too loud at his jokes, who always seemed to be texting him at odd hours, the late nights at the office, the calls. That would stop the moment she entered the room. The scent of that same floral perfume on his shirt one evening. "I never had proof," Emily confessed, the shame coloring her words, making them heavy. "He would have called me crazy, paranoid. So I swallowed it. All of it. Just 1,000 little cuts, 1,000 little moments of feeling like a fool in my own home. And then came the heaviest stone of all, the sterile, beeping, unforgiving finality of the hospital. "He was so weak," she choked out, the dam of her composure finally breaking, tears hot and furious now flowing freely. The machines were beeping, this relentless rhythm counting down his life. And all I could feel, underneath the grief, was this cold, hard anger. It was a battle inside my own soul, right there in that silent antiseptic room. One part of me, the part that still loved him fiercely, wanted to grab his hand, to tell him it was all okay, that none of it mattered. But the other part, the wounded part, it was screaming. It demanded justice. It needed to know if the pain had been real. I stood by his bed, and I didn't hold his hand. I couldn't. I looked at him, at his pale face, and I let the wounded part of me win. I said, was she worth it? Was any of it worth this? He tried to speak. His eyes begged me, but he couldn't. He just looked at me. The nurse asked me to leave, and he passed away 2 hours later. My last words to him, the last thing he ever heard from me, were an accusation. She finally broke down completely. Her sobs were raw, echoing in the quiet room. A sound of pure, unadulterated regret. In the hush that followed her storm, I began to shuffle my deck. The cards are like mirrors. They don't judge, they don't lie. They simply reflect what is given to them. They soak up every guilt, every secret, and Emily's guilt was a poison she had been drinking every single day for 5 years. When you finally dare to face what's been hidden, the universe takes notice. The world whispers back. As my hands moved over the worn velvet of the cards, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavy, thick, like right before a lightning strike. A cold draft that had no earthly origin snaked around Emily's ankles, making her shiver violently. I laid out the first card. It didn't just land, it flipped over, as if pushed by an unseen, impatient hand. Death. Emily flinched. It is not a literal end, I explained, my voice low and steady, a rock in her turbulent sea. It is a transformation, the necessary shedding of an old skin, to allow for a new, truer one to emerge. As the words left my mouth, a loud, sharp rap echoed from the window pane. We both turned. A single large crow was perched on the sill. It wasn't just sitting there. It was observing. Its head cocked, its black, intelligent eyes fixed on us, as if it had purchased a ticket to this very moment and had every right to bear witness. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. He hated crows, she whispered, her voice trembling. He said they were bad omens, that they feasted on the dead. Or perhaps, I countered gently, they are simply messengers, the postmen of the spirit world. That's when she froze. Her eyes widened, darting around the room, not in fear, but in shocked recognition. The scent hit me a moment later, his cologne. Not a memory of a scent, not a phantom from the past, but the real, tangible presence of it. Sandalwood and leather, and something that was uniquely him. It wrapped around us like a memory that refused to die. Completely, utterly overpowering the sweet foreign perfume I'd smelled on her coat earlier. He was here, and he was making his presence known. There are questions we ask, even though we're terrified of the answers. Questions that claw their way up from our souls. Emily drew a breath, a ragged, shuddering thing that seemed to scrape her ribs raw. She was looking at the empty chair beside her. Then, in a voice that barely rose above a heartbeat, she let the poison out. Was it true? Mark, did you really betray me? I turned the next card over. There it was. The lovers, reversed, disharmony, misalignment, a broken connection. Before I could even begin to interpret it, a voice drifted into the space between us. It was faint, fragmented, like a radio signal struggling to find its frequency through leagues of static. Forgive me. So sorry. Emily's face went white, a mask of agony. Her worst fear, seemingly confirmed. From beyond the grave, the 1,000 cuts suddenly became a single mortal wound. Her eyes filled with the agony of that wound being ripped open anew. She started to pull away from the table, a choked, strangled sob escaping her lips. Ready to flee, to run back into the storm, to anywhere but here. Wait, I commanded. My voice was not loud, but it was firm, an iron anchor holding her gaze. It is not what you think. The spirits, they often speak in riddles born of their own pain and confusion. You heard a fragment, not the whole. Listen, the cards show confusion, not deception. Let him finish. We waited, in the thick, charged silence. The flame of the single candle on the table danced wildly, casting frantic, leaping shadows on the walls. Then, the rest of the message sliced through the veil, clearer this time, stronger, filled with an energy of profound, desperate urgency. Forgive me for not protecting you from her jealousy, from her whispers, the necklace, the diamond one. It was for you, for our anniversary, a surprise. I hid it in my office drawer, but she found it. She told you those lies. She wanted what we had. The voice grew stronger still, filled with a sorrow so immense it transcended worlds. My greatest mistake, my failure, was seeing the fear in your eyes and not screaming the truth until you believed me. My mistake was leaving without clearing that poison from your chest. Don't believe the ghosts she planted in your mind. As the truth finally settled in the room, Emily gasped as she felt the locket on her neck grow warm against her skin. Not just warm, but hot, as if he were right there, pouring all the love and regret he could muster directly into it. His final whisper was for her alone. I did not hear it with my ears, but I felt it. A gentle breeze against her ear. A soft touch on her soul. Leave the past with me. Live. Emily wept. But these were not the bitter, angry tears of before. These were cleansing tears, a holy water, rinsing the deepest, dustiest, most painful corners of her soul. Between the gentle sobs, a fragile smile cracked through the grief. Not quite happiness. Not yet. But it was peace. The kind of profound peace that comes only after the longest war. I leaned in. True closure isn't about forgetting the story, I whispered. It's about understanding the ending. It's about releasing the weight they never meant for you to carry. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her purse and took out the simple gold wedding ring she had carried for 5 agonizing years. She didn't put it on. She simply held it for a moment, then placed it gently on the table, next to the lover's card. A silent offering, a choice. She was letting go of the pain, but not the love. She was finally separating the two. The room, so heavy moments ago, now seemed to breathe with her, lighter, clearer. As she pulled her coat around her shoulders, preparing to leave, I let slip a sliver of the truth yet to come. A hook for a future I could already see. But not every visitor from the other side is so kind, my dear. Not every spirit seeks to heal. I watched her disappear into the now quiet night, her shoulders back, lighter than she'd been in years. What Emily didn't know, couldn't know, was that for every spirit like her husband, whispering forgiveness, there's another dragging chains of revenge and malice behind it. And those stories, well, that's something I'll share next time. You see, my dear, what keeps us bound, what keeps us imprisoned, isn't the lock on the door. It is our own fear of what truths lie on the other side. Emily came to my door seeking closure, and she left with freedom. But it wasn't magic that freed her. It was a choice. She chose to face the ghost she had allowed to be created in her own mind. And you, what ghosts do you still hold tight in the dead of night, pretending they're gone when the sun rises? What accusations have you whispered into the silence that were never answered? What forgiveness have you failed to offer to others? Or perhaps, most importantly, to yourself? Maybe tonight is the night to listen, to hear what your own soul has been whispering in the moments just before you fall asleep. You don't need candles or cards to start. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to ask the question and the quiet patience to truly listen for the answer. Now, I ask you, a question for our community of souls. Tell me in the comments, if you could ask just one thing to someone who's gone, what would it be? Write it, let it out. I read every word. And if you wish to keep crossing this veil with me, to hear more stories from beyond, don't forget, subscribe, ring the bell for all our secrets, and stay close. Because what the veil hides, oh, I have so much more to show you yet.